Is there a final goal for human evolution? It's a big question, and it's one a lot of people think about. We like to think about our lives having a purpose. We like to think there's a reason for things. So it makes sense we'd wonder if there's some big plan for us, for humanity, for where we're all going. But when you look at evolution, really look at it, the answer is pretty clear. No, there isn't a final goal, not in the way we usually mean it. Evolution doesn't have a destination. It doesn't have a finish line. It's not working towards anything. It just happens. It's a process, and it's a process without a mind, without a will, without a plan. Let's talk about what evolution is first, just to be clear, because sometimes people use the word, but they don't quite get what it means in science. Evolution, in simple terms, is how living things change over time. That's it. It's about how different traits become more common or less common in a group of animals or plants over many, many generations. The main way this happens is something called natural selection. You've probably heard of it. It sounds fancy, but it's really not. Think of it like this. In any group of living things, say, a bunch of deer, not every deer is exactly the same. Some are a bit faster, some have slightly different fur, some can eat different plants. This is called variation. Everyone is a little bit different, and these differences, many of them, can be passed down from parents to their kids. That's inheritance. Now, life isn't easy. There are always challenges. Maybe there are wolves trying to catch the deer. Maybe there isn't enough food. Maybe the weather gets really cold. So, not all the deer will survive. And not all of them will have a chance to have babies. Which deer are more likely to survive and have babies? The ones whose traits help them deal with the challenges. If being faster helps you get away from wolves, then the faster deer are more likely to live and have fast little fawns. If having thicker fur helps you stay warm, then the deer with thicker fur will do better in cold weather. They'll have more babies, and those babies will also likely have thick fur. Over a very long time, many generations, the group of deer will, on average, become faster or have thicker fur or whatever trait helped them out. This is natural selection. Nature is selecting who gets to pass on their genes, not because it's trying to make a better deer, but just because those traits happen to work well right now in that specific place. And that's the key. Evolution is always about the right now. It's about adapting to the current environment. It has no way of knowing what the environment will be like tomorrow or 1,000 years from now. So it can't plan for it. It can't have a goal for it. A trait that's great today might be terrible tomorrow if things change. Think about a fish that lives in a clear, fast-moving river. Being streamlined and having strong fins to swim against the current is super helpful. But what if that river dries up and becomes a muddy, slow pond? Those fins might not be so good anymore. Maybe a fish that can breathe air or burrow in the mud would do better. The goal wasn't to become a super swimmer forever. It was just to survive and reproduce in that specific river at that specific time. So, when we talk about human evolution, it's the same story. Our ancestors changed over time because of natural selection. Walking upright was a big one. It probably helped them see over tall grass, carry things, or cool down in the sun. Having bigger brains helped them make tools, solve problems, and work together. These weren't steps on a ladder leading to us. They were just useful traits that helped our ancestors survive and have more babies in the specific environments they were in. We didn't evolve to be doctors or astronauts or to write books. We evolved to survive and reproduce in a world full of dangers and limited resources. Our big brains, our language, our ability to cooperate, these were all adaptations that helped us do that. And because those traits were successful, they became more common. But why do we even ask if there's a goal? Why does it feel like there should be one? Well, we're humans, and humans love stories. We love narratives. We love to see purpose in things. Our own lives have goals, right? We want to finish school, get a job, start a family, or travel the world. We plan for the future. So it's natural for us to project that kind of planning and purpose onto everything else, including something as vast and ancient as evolution. We also tend to think in terms of progress. We often see history as a journey from simpler times to more advanced times. And we apply that idea to evolution too. We think of evolution as always moving towards something better, something higher. We might think of ourselves, modern humans, as the pinnacle, the best thing evolution has made so far. That's a very human-centric way of looking at things, and it's not how evolution works. From evolution's point of view, a successful bacteria is just as evolved as a human. The bacteria have been around for billions of years, adapting and reproducing. They're incredibly successful. There's no higher or lower in evolution. There's just what works for survival and reproduction in the environment a creature finds itself in. A mosquito that successfully bites and lays eggs is just as successful as a human who gets a PhD and writes a novel in terms of evolution. And our languages often make this harder. We talk about species evolving into another species, like a caterpillar evolving into a butterfly, but that's not quite right. A caterpillar develops into a butterfly. It's the same organism changing form. Evolution is about changes in populations over generations. It's not one thing changing into another thing within its lifetime. We also talk about things being more evolved, but that's not a scientific term. Everything alive today is equally evolved, in the sense that it's the result of billions of years of the evolutionary process. Sometimes religious or philosophical ideas also feed this feeling that there is a goal. Many belief systems suggest a grand design, a creator with a plan, a final state of being for humanity. And that's a powerful idea. But science, specifically the science of evolution, doesn't find evidence for such a plan or goal. It describes a mechanism, a process that just unfolds based on simple rules. So, if there's no goal, where are we going? Are we still evolving? Yes, absolutely. Evolution didn't stop with us. It's happening all the time. But the pressures are changing. Our environment is very different now than it was for our early ancestors. Think about medicine. We've largely overcome many of the diseases that used to kill huge numbers of people before they could have children. This means that natural selection based on disease resistance is still happening, but it's different. We also move around the world a lot more now. People from different populations who might have been separated for thousands of years are now having children together. This mixes up the gene pool, and that's a form of evolutionary change too. What kinds of things might be selected for now? It's hard to say for sure. Maybe resistance to new diseases, maybe traits that help us cope with crowded cities or with highly processed food. Maybe traits related to living a long time after reproduction. Our social structures, our technology, our global movement, these are all new selective pressures. And then there's our technology. This is where it gets really interesting. For most of history, evolution was just what happened to us. We were subjects of the process. But now, we have the power to influence it directly. We can edit genes, we can select embryos, we can potentially choose traits for our children. This is a huge shift. We are, for the first time, not just evolving, but we have the potential to direct our own evolution, to set our own goals. But this raises so many questions. If we decide to use gene editing, what traits would we choose? Who gets to decide what's better? Is it about making us smarter, stronger? More resistant to certain diseases, more empathetic, less violent? These are all human values, not something evolution cares about. And what one person or culture thinks is better might be very different from another. This idea of using technology to guide our evolution, to become something more than human, is sometimes called transhumanism. It's about consciously trying to overcome our biological limitations. That's a human-made goal. It's not a goal inherent in the evolutionary process itself. It's us trying to impose a goal onto a process that has none. And that's a crucial distinction. Evolution itself is blind. It doesn't have foresight. It doesn't plan. It doesn't care about good or bad. It doesn't care about our values. It simply favors what helps an organism survive and reproduce in its current environment. If a trait makes you able to have more babies, that trait will likely spread, whether we humans think it's a good trait or not. For example, imagine a situation where being less empathetic somehow led to more survival and reproduction in a very harsh, competitive future. But evolution would favor that. It wouldn't say, oh, but empathy is a good human trait, we should keep it. It would just run its course. That's a scary thought for some, but it illustrates how amoral, how non-judgmental the process is. So, if there's no final goal, what does that mean for us? For how we think about ourselves? Well, it means a few things. First, it means we are responsible. If there's no predetermined path for humanity, then we get to decide what kind of future we want. We get to decide what we value. We get to decide what we should strive for. This can be empowering. It means we're not just passengers on a ride with a fixed destination. We have a say in where the journey goes. Second, it means we need to be careful about what we call progress. Evolution isn't about making things better in a moral sense. It's about adaptation. Sometimes adaptation leads to more complexity, like a human brain. Sometimes it leads to simplification, like a parasite losing parts it no longer needs. Both are equally successful in evolutionary terms if they help the organism survive and reproduce. So, when we talk about human progress, we're really talking about our own human-defined ideas of progress, like social progress, technological progress, moral progress. These are human endeavors, separate from the blind process of evolution. Third, it helps us appreciate the amazing diversity of life. If everything was aiming for one goal, we'd probably end up with very few types of living things. But because evolution just tries different things out, seeing what works in different situations, we get an incredible variety of creatures, each perfectly adapted to its own niche. And that's beautiful. Sometimes people find the idea of no goal a bit depressing. Like, what's the point then? But I think it's the opposite. It makes the point ours. We get to decide the point. We get to give our lives meaning. We get to give humanity meaning. Our evolution gave us the capacity to think, to question, to feel, to dream, and with those gifts, we can choose our own direction. Think about it this way: a river flows downhill. That's its process. It doesn't have a goal to reach the ocean. It just goes where gravity takes it, shaping the land as it goes. Evolution is kind of like that. It's a natural process driven by natural laws flowing through time. It shapes living things, creating incredible forms and functions, but it doesn't have a plan for what the final shape should be. The river might change its course if something blocks it, or if the land shifts. And evolution changes its course as environments change. So when someone asks if there's a final goal to human evolution, you can say no. Not in the grand, predetermined, purposeful sense. We are products of a magnificent, unthinking, ongoing process. And that's a pretty amazing thing to be. It means our story isn't written for us. We're still writing it day by day, choice by choice. And that in itself is a kind of freedom.